Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Unbreakable Life with Glory, the podcast. This is Gloria Goldberg, the founder of this podcast, where we talk about depression, anxiety, PTSD in a natural way, in a holistic way to always make you feel better. So, how everybody? How are you, everybody? Here again. This morning I came in Espanol, and now is the time and the turn from English. And we're gonna have a very special guest, and I'm gonna bring him in quickly because with him we're gonna have a long conversation, and we're gonna go very deep, like maybe you sometimes will not understand even what he's saying. And if you are a little bit more open, probably you will understand, but we're going to go deep. And the topic today is becoming doubtless. And I said, becoming doubtless, that means you don't think about anything. You just let the fear goes and live your life as it comes. And that's what exactly I talked this morning when I was telling you the story about my kidnap. I did that when I was kidnapped. I was in the beginning fear, with a lot of fear, and then you became fearless because you have nothing left. You have nothing left. You just have to go with the flow, have to be in the present and do what you have to do to be able to survive. But with him today, we're going to go deeper than that. And I'm going to ask him how we can become doubtless. And I would say, if you become doubtless, you would take a lot of weight from you, because a lot of weight that we have in our head is about thinking too much about anything, about the past, about the future, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen later, and this and this and that. And when you live with a life with doubtless, you have more space to enjoy more life, more space to see other stuff that you probably didn't see because you were so heavy in your doubts and having a lot of thinking, and you was not able to like breathe and say, oh, I feel relaxed, I feel happier, I feel light because I'm doubtless. So let's introduce him. His name is Julian Polzin. He's a psychotherapist. He dedicate his life of spirituality, but he also, when he treat his patients, he treat in a spiritual way because he got like tired, or he saw the approach of psychotherapy. It was much better for him to do it in a spiritual way. So let's welcome him to Unbreakable Life with Glory, the podcast, Julian Polzin. Hi,
Hello,
Julian.
everyone.
How are
Beautiful to see
you?
you, Gloria. I'm great. I'm enjoying myself. And I
Eh,
hope
thank you so much. Julian, tell everybody where's your location and what time is now.
all right now. I'm still living in Germany. I was born as a German. This lifetime, I say specifically this lifetime because, well, we exist in a multidimensionality. So now you see someone with a German appearance who's apparently living in Germany, and it's 9 p.m. here.
9 p.m. Well, I'm in Florida right now and it's 3:05 p.m. in the other side of the continent. So, Julian, before we start with this deep topic today, I want you to tell everybody who is Julian posing from your words.
Well, then I can't speak. Bec- If I really tell you who I am, I will be perfectly quiet.
And what is that?
Because who we are on the deepest level is perfectly quiet. Still. You see, it's not the appearances, it's not the voices, it's not your thoughts, it's not your emotion, it's not your body. All of that is what we have accumulated after the quietness, the stillness, the silence. Yeah. These are things that we have created, and we start confusing ourselves with our own creation. So when we introduce ourselves and we give someone a story, and let's say the story, well, hello, I'm Julian, I'm a psychotherapist, I work spiritually, I work with meditation, mindfulness, and yoga. and I offer retreats and all this. This is a narrative. This is a story. And this is something that you'll figure out if you watch, for example, documentary movies. Imagine watching a wildlife documentary about animals without a narrator. And you will realize you see so much more, because every time you get a narration, what you're being offered is limitation.
Yes.
So if I tell you I'm Julian, I'm a psychotherapist, what do? I put myself in a box. Now I say I'm defined that way. If I believe I am that, then suddenly there's something that is very fragile and I need to defend it. And that's defending illusion. Right now, there is the appearance of the phenomena of Julian. Yeah, and there's a psychotherapy license. All right, but that's not what I am. All of this happens within time, and everything that happens within time is impermanent. It cannot survive this experience. This body will not survive this experience. Yeah, I will give up this body at a certain time when it's ready to be given up. But if I confuse myself for this body, then I will create suffering and limitations, because now I try to defend my illusions. And that is to exist in fear. Fear is pointless, and suffering is pointless as well.
Okay, so when you said, you said fear is pointless. Can you explain a little bit why fear is pointless? Because a lot of people would like to know. Because a lot of people, even me, we are always like in a little bit fear, or fear for everything, fear to get sick, fear we don't have the food, fear for every single thing. So how we can live our life fearless?
Well, let me answer that with a question. Has fear ever served you?
No. Yes, in some way, like in survival mode, that make me to react in some way because I'm afraid. So it make me react in some way for survival mode. But other than that, no, it just create more problems on me.
See, even in a survival situation, in an actual situation where your body is in danger,
right?
Why are all the professionals, firefighters, policemen, soldiers, or emergency surgeons, for example, why are they all practicing to be calm? Because they're actually more capable when they're not in a state of fear. That's why they train so much, so they're in such a routine that they're not acting from fear, that they're not being reactive, but they respond from training. So when you understand this, fear actually doesn't add anything.
Right.
And often society is selling you fear as awareness, but fear is not awareness. So when we watched over the last 2 years, those totalitarian regimes popping up around us, the total control, with all the paranoia that was being instilled to keep people in line. When we look at that, then people were attacked for not being afraid. How dare you not be afraid? Said you have to be afraid, there's a danger. I can be aware of a danger, but it does not require fear. I can have a conscious response to a danger without being in a state of fear. Fear doesn't add anything. So then is the question, what is fear? Fear is something that comes from identification with the body. But if we now start, start questioning Western society, start questioning the materialistic paradigm where everybody tells you you are a brain and a body that you have made to believe since you were a little kid. When you start questioning that and actually find out for some reason, or you have been touched by grace and you were very fortunate that it happened, that you found out that you're not the body, that you're not the brain, and that all this fear was actually a reinforcement of a belief of identity into the body. And that's my wonderful wife.
Hi.
So what I'm saying is fear is a result of replacing identity in physicality. Yeah. When you call what you call yourself, if you believe it to be the body, it means you have to exist in terror. Because you know you're going to die.
Right.
Right. And then the mind starts fantasizing. Am I going to die from cancer, from AIDS? If I'm going to die from whatever, poisoning. So the mind, when we identify with the body, what happens is the mind is constantly worrying about survival.
Yes.
And I tell you, that kills you faster than anything. Worry is poison.
Yes.
Yeah, if you tell your body that you're worried, your body's constantly in survival fear and you drain its energy. But aside from that, it is not only about what's smart, but it's about what is true. There is a reason why for thousands of years certain spiritual practices have survived, because they lead to an end of the body illusion. And all our sufferings come from body.
Yes.
Our body wants things. Our body wants to avoid things. So you're constantly in being attracted or avoidance. And this is what Buddha called duality. There is pleasure. Oh, you want the pleasure. Well, if you're not getting the pleasure, suddenly you're anxious because you're not getting the pleasure. If you have the pleasure, you're afraid of losing the pleasure.
Yes.
And you can replace pleasure with anything. You can replace it with the idea of comfort or safety. Have not those black magicians in the towers have told you stay safe? They know exactly who they're talking to those people who believe that they're bodies, because they will be obedient because they want to stay safe. So in life, we have a choice, and this choice is simple. And minds don't like to hear that. Minds like to intellectualize it, to make it academic, because the more complicated you make it, the more space you have for excuses and escaping yourself. The choice is simple. The choice is choose your divine origin or choose matter. It is very simple.
Right.
And in every moment we make that choice, we either choose to love, that means we act from our divine nature, because love is not powerless. Love is not limited. Love is not tiny. Love is not guilty. Love is not full of doubt. Love is not sinful. When you're in a state of love, you will not act from selfishness. That means
Right.
you don't act from identity. But when you act from fear, the main concern is self-centeredness. Fear and self-centeredness are one and the same thing. The more self-centered the being is, the more fear they experience. So that's our choice. We act from self-centeredness or love. And we make this decision every day, every moment of our life. And at some point we realize there's only one moment. There's not a chain of moments. There's just now. Just now. And in the now, you either choose your divine nature or you reject it. If you reject it, you're going to escape into the intellect and into the body and say, I'm separate from God. And because I'm separate from God, I need to be selfish. Because I'm vulnerable, I will not survive, and I'm a body. And this is why I can take advantage of people. Or this is why I can choose slavery, for example. How many millions of people have done this over the last 2 years? They have chosen slavery because they have chosen the limitation instead of acting from the divinity. So why do we create doubt and guilt? Doubt and guilt is a way of avoiding the divine.
Right.
We place it there as a barrier. And this is something that many spiritual practitioners actually struggle with, even high-level practitioners, before they break through into a higher level of understanding. What often happens is that they can't step through the last door because they still think they need to work harder, they need to save more people, hear more people, do this. They're using guilt to weigh their energy down because they don't want to be free. They actually still have desires. Yeah, narcissistic desires. I need to be a savior. Yeah, because I want to be a savior, I need to save people. So I don't allow myself to reach an energy threshold where I'm really free, completely free, not relatively free, not partial freedom. Yeah, not just a little bit financial freedom or a little bit of peace of mind. No. Freedom is either absolute or it's not freedom.
Right.
If you go for something less than absolute, you're going for an illusion.
Okay, so how we can be doubtless, how we can practice to be like that, because a lot of people would like to be like that, to be more light in life, to be more happier, more content, more at ease, more observer about life, more different, not reacting every time. How we can do that?
And that's the answer that many do not like. It takes dedication.
Yes.
Yeah, it takes great dedication, great discipline to unlearn all the illusions that we have accumulated in this world, because everything that exists in us that we perceive as, let's say, a low frequency experience, yeah, first of all emotions that are labeled negative, so to speak, are representing fear. So guilt, shame, anger, jealousy, all these emotions are actually an aspect of fear. Yeah, that is what's underneath it, actually. These are just
But
variants of expression.
but those emotions, we all have it, and and the body's going to express it anyway. The point is not to have fear of them, right?
Well, when you say we all have it, this is an understanding that you have right now. In your own practice, you have reached a point where you understand, oh, I don't have to react to that, because by not reacting to it, I stop giving in energy. So I stop reinforcing the illusion. So I actually detach myself from it, and slowly the illusions seem to be less severe and
Yes.
generate less emotional baggage or strain, so to speak. But at some point, there is the still point where there is no such fluctuation whatsoever. There is no emotion. And this is what people find scary, because they believe to be real is to be emotional.
Right.
But
Yes.
you
And
can
I also
approach,
I
yeah.
also thought about that too.
Yes. So people then say, and I hear this from many spiritual practitioners, even if they have years of experience, they believe they have to suffer with people who are suffering, otherwise they're not compassionate.
No.
And it's nonsense. It's a guilt trip.
Yes.
Yeah, where we lower our own energy because we actually want to punish ourselves on some level.
No.
And there is a fear sometimes that many people have. Well, if I'm joyful in situations that people perceive as disastrous, then I will be attacked.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
And that's the
Yes.
collective consciousness. Now, if I obey to that, then I make myself a slave. And this
Hmm.
is exactly what happens. So, as an idea, let's say a friend walks up to you and says, one of my family members died. And they're very sad. But what happens if you would actually work as a psychic medium and you would speak to spirit all the time telepathically? You would not feel that sadness because
No.
you know nothing was lost.
Right.
But if you now feed the illusion of your friend to avoid his attack, what are you doing? You're denying who you are. And this is the corruption, where we sell our soul because we're afraid to be attacked. So we then reinforce the illusions of others, which is the opposite of compassion, by the way. If I reinforce someone's grief, how can he escape it? I recently took a walk on the graveyard, and there was a woman who was grieving. She lost her husband. And I was sitting on a bench meditating, and I asked her to sit with me. And we had a spiritual conversation, maybe for half an hour. And she told me her whole life she was busy. 9 to 5, constantly working, making money. And then she suddenly realized, now my husband's gone, and I have no distraction for myself. I can't take the silence. And I told her in that conversation, you have been avoiding God your whole life, because
Yes.
God is in the silence. And now your husband, by leaving you, gives you an opportunity to reconnect with the divine, because before you could distract yourself from that through comfort.
Wow, you make me think something that is my in my personal life right now. I couldn't be. I need my time alone in silence to be closer to God, to be able to do the job that I'm doing. Because before I was distracted with a lot of problems that I have in my relationship.
Well, that's the thing. But what are distractions really? Distractions are desires that you buy into because deep down there is a belief not to be worthy of peace, not to be worthy of the divine.
Yes.
So then, and this is something that I see in the family karma of many people, that they use family as an excuse not to liberate themselves. They use family as a scapegoat. They say, I cannot be free because I'm needed here, or I'm needed there, or I need to fulfill this role. And they think their families are special. But when I work with my clients, I'm going to be very open about that, I see a lot of psychic information, so I can see their past lives. And then they thought in 50 consecutive lifetimes, my family is special, and got trapped in 50 lifetimes. And then they think when they, for example, get an opportunity to enter a path of spiritual liberation, then they think, oh, only this time I'm going to choose my family. Only this time. Next lifetime, I can work on my liberation. So the ego always delays. The ego finds always worldly excuses and says, my identity is somewhere placed in the world, and I have a certain role to fulfill, but it's an avoidance of the divine. Because if we truly would be looking for service, and this is the example I often give, if someone is a skilled heart surgeon, why should they work as a nurse? It doesn't make sense. He can be of much more service, or she, by being a heart surgeon. So if you have, for example, the potential to be a spiritual coach or a medium, you can help thousands of people, but then we use the family karma, then we use 4 or 5 people that we say are special because we have been programmed to believe that, to withhold our service towards the world, and we call it good. It's completely delusional.
Yeah, because yes, you're born in a family that you choose to be born in that family, but you being in that family to learn to be in that family, to learn everything, all the aspects of that family. But doesn't mean you have to stay there forever. If you have to leave to be able to serve or be closer to God, if there's a lot of noise to be able to be closer to God, sometimes you have to leave the family. That's exactly what I understand what you just said.
Yeah. And don't we see this, let's say, even the mainstream religions who are very watered down and very distorted from the original practices. Yeah. What you find in the Bible, in writing, is extremely watered down and edited. And
Yes.
much of what Yeshua was teaching, much of it is secretly withheld by the church. Because they didn't want a society of enlightened beings, but they wanted a society of addicts. People that need the church, that believe that they're sinners, so they support the church financially so they can gain power. As a form of black magic, if you will. And nothing to do with love or bringing you into enlightenment. But what many people do not know, that Yeshua was a yogi. Yeah, there is a lot of time where history cannot track him. And in that time, he went to Tibet, he went to India, and he was sitting with the realized yogis in the mountains. So he went there to be reminded of who he is. But for that, he had to leave his home.
Right.
Buddha did the same thing. He left his wife, he left his child, he left his father, who was the king, who wanted him to be the king, and said, you better be a king. And of course, they all tried to trap him with guilt. You're not a good son if you leave the father. You're not a good person if you don't want to be the king and take the responsibility. You're not a good husband if you leave your wife. You're a horrible father if you leave your son. But his love was greater. He realized, by seeing the suffering of the poor people, they are all family. Everyone is family.
Everyone, yes.
Special relationship is over. When special relationship is over, then you can be of service. And what is Western society teaching you? Western society shows you in all the movies, romantic relationship is liberation. You find your partner is going to save you from all your suffering. That's a con.
Yes.
It doesn't work.
No.
So everybody is asked to be of service. All of you had some sort of divine intervention. Maybe you have not been conscious of it, for example. Everybody gets invitation on a daily basis, but if they're not mindful, if they're not meditative, they might miss those invitations. But everybody has invitations. Yeah, everybody might have bumped into someone on a crossroad who had a word of wisdom that they needed to hear, but then they ignored it along the way. Why? Because it meant to leave the comfort zone. So they're overemphasizing biological survival, yeah, and ignore truth for biological survival. And everything that is based on biological survival will lead to selfishness. Oh, I want to reproduce. Oh, I want to secure a food source. Yeah. But now I might have to take advantage of people or manipulate people. That is the belief. But in truth, if you come into your divinity, you will have other abilities of attracting things into your life.
Yes.
Yeah. That brings about solutions that doesn't require manipulation or fear. So what people do is this. They are attached to desires. Now, and if I speak to my teachers in spirit, if I do it telepathically, they will say fear/desire, because fear and desire is the same thing.
Why is the same thing? Can you
Because
explain
desires are born out of fear. So as an example,
Yes.
if someone has a childhood trauma where they're being bullied, now they believe they have no value. All right? Because they received this programming like you have no value. So later in life, they develop a narcissism. Now they need to be extra successful, extra attractive, extra this, and they have tremendous desire for that. But getting this success is not going to relieve you from the suffering, because now you have to keep the success, and your whole life will be full of anxiety because you need to keep it in control. Control is based on fear. But what would lead to liberation is to undo the belief that you have no value. Once you have undone the belief, suddenly you look at yourself like, why was I climbing mountains? To impress people.
Yes.
Why did I have plastic surgery? To be more attractive. Why did I do all these things to myself? Because once you understand that you have intrinsic value based on your divine origin, you wouldn't want to impress. You wouldn't want to do this to yourself. So if I have to impress someone and I have a belief that I'm not impressive.
Exactly. Of course.
So what I'm saying is that out of our fears, desire is born. Imagine someone who had a lot of rejection from the opposite gender. And suddenly they're on a trip to become a pickup artist, and they start studying this and so on. So, and suddenly this person gets a lot of success with the opposite gender. But then might meet a partner that could advance him or her spiritually. But now you have to give up all the other experiences. What you gonna do now? So what I'm saying is, desire is born out of fear. And when we restore our divine state, it's not that it's lost, but you have veiled it from yourself. There's obscuration. Like when we start removing that obscuration, and you sit somewhere in nature and you're in a state of bliss, but there's nothing special going on. There's not a great party. You have not been promoted. You're not having the greatest sex of your life. You're just sitting there in nature. You're watching grass, and suddenly you get into the space of no suffering. In that space of no suffering, there's no desire. It does not occur. Desire is something that is born out of trauma. And the more we desire, the more we want to be human and use the human to fulfill our desires. And what then happens? Reincarnation, over and over and over again. More suffering. When in truth, in your divine state, you have no needs because you're at perfect peace. So then it's important when we have desires, what fears are behind those desires. This is what is important to figure out. What fearful beliefs do we have? And through the spiritual practice, we undo them. And through undoing them, they will be replaced by truth. Now, someone who is not doubt, who has no doubt, is either a psychopath or an enlightened being. But there's a very proper distinction here. Someone who has no doubt and is a psychopath lives in the mind. He lives in 100% self-denial. He's just in the illusion that he has no doubt. He has tremendous doubt. But he is denying that fact to himself. Now, someone who is spiritually awakened has transcended the mind, and he receives information, or she, again, gender doesn't matter here, by the way. So once we start receiving information from divine sources directly, without a middle person, without a priest, a mullah, a guru in between, when you start receiving those informations directly, you will suddenly realize, I don't need to reflect. I don't need to calculate. I don't need to analyze, because if I go into meditation and I still my mind and I go into the direct divine connection, answers come instantaneously with grace and no struggle. So suddenly the mind is being replaced by a universal mind, where when you set the intention in meditation, the proper information arises from within what you could call the universal mind, the God mind, whatever you want to call it. But then you get those answers from a higher place, and you will find out in life, oh, I'm getting those answers, and those answers are always precise.
Yes.
Suddenly the need to use the mind starts reducing. And when there is little mind activity, you will realize also that there is no fear.
Right.
Fear is based on thought. But what happens if I have a particular question? Let's say I experience a conflict in life. Now I sit down in meditation and I have a vision. And this vision explains me exactly what happened in a past life 400 years ago, why I started having that belief. And it makes perfect sense. Suddenly the fear drops completely and the suffering drops completely with regards to that particular aspect of experience. But when you understand this, that you can do it with an aspect, that means you can do it with everything. When you free yourself of an aspect of a fearful belief, let's say a fearful belief is an aspect of an illusion. So if you can free yourself of that, that means if I can be free of one illusion, I can be free of all illusions. So why would I settle for relative freedom and say, well, I keep 50% of illusion and I allow the divine to a certain degree in my life? But if the divine says, well, we have here the story that helps to free you from your sex trauma, but then you have to give up your fetishism. Then it gets interesting, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course.
What do we choose? So when we choose desire, there will always be suffering. Yes.
So when you decide, like, I'm gonna go back to a little bit to something that you said before, like for example, a trauma, like my trauma, like what happens to me, the kidnap. That after that I became more auto-kidnap because I was in fear all the time. So right there, I was always with thoughts, and I was even more imprisoned in myself than more than I was kidnapped until I realized that I don't need that anymore because I was suffering. I really had a huge baggage on me. So for me to get to the point to just release that, it's like I need to get out of the fear. And it took me a long time to remove that from the body. Why some people, we have such a long time to remove fear from our body, from our lives after a trauma?
This has to do with your own individual evolution as a soul. So to give you a loving response, a compassionate response, it is to understand that ultimately there are no limitations. Limitations that you experience are a phenomenon of time, right? So we can say within time, someone has mastered a certain instrument, for example. Don't we see when children get born and they're in the kindergarten and they have different talents and some are more skilled at painting than others? Yeah, why?
Right.
Because it's not the first time that they're doing this. In their past lives, some of them were already painting. So what actually happens is that you build on your ability to transmute trauma. And someone who has been a realized being in a past life and comes back down to earth for service has already done all those transmutations. So when that being is going through it again, freeing oneself of identity and of body and of mind, it happens much faster. Because there's an intrinsic knowing of how it works. So when it takes you a certain time, see, if you have no belief that you're not valuable, then it's not an issue that it takes you a certain time. You can value yourself in the time that it takes. That's all right. There's the process here.
Mm-hmm.
But you pose a good question. And the question is, why do some beings transmute certain things much quicker? Okay, again, past lives, past life ability. If someone has been a yogi in their past life or a Buddhist monk and they had certain practice or a shaman or whatever, and they get reborn and they're confronted with something very, very similar, they will initiate themselves again into that understanding. But they made some lifetime before the choice to begin transmuting that. So that means everything that you do right now, once you leave your body and you take on another body, it will get easier. Why will it get easier? Because you already know. You can then, and when you then get in touch again with spiritual practice, you will start downloading your previous understanding, and it will help you in transmuting the energies. But now what is also important is that at the time when you try to transmute that, you still had a lot of impressions based on the fact that you believe to be the body.
Mm-hmm.
So if you believe to be the body, it's very difficult to convince you of the fact that on a higher level, you're not endangered because you're perceiving the body mostly. You might have some glimpses at spiritual truth. You might have some moments of peace and stillness. So I've got to be careful what I say here right now. Careful not in terms of withholding information, but I do understand that many things are very difficult to believe for people.
Right.
Again, belief is a placeholder. My job, so to speak, or my assignment is to get beings into the actual experience of what I'm saying, not try to convince them that what I'm saying is true, but to get them into the experience so they can verify it for themselves.
Right.
But when we have several years of spiritual practice, at some point, abilities develop. Abilities to see spirit, for example, or to see energy. And if I see myself as an energy, then I know I'm not in danger. Because if the body is destroyed, the energy will survive the body. But if I have not experienced that directly, that it happened to me, that there was no place for doubt, no place for analysis or questioning, that it was so total in experience that it doesn't require faith because it was so self-evident. When we start having those experiences beyond body, and when you're having them more and more and more, traumas appear less severe and they dissolve much faster, because it is very different to see at a temporary phenomenon as an immortal being or as a mortal being. If you look at it as a mortal being, you still believe I was in danger. But if you could experience yourself beyond the body, you will know that you were never in actual danger as who you are. The illusion of who you are was in danger. The idea of Gloria, the person, might have been in danger subjectively. And when you are identified with this, yes, you experience suffering.
Yeah.
But the path of the yogi is to identify from all phenomena completely. From mind, from emotion, from body, from instinct, to undo all those limitations. And without identification, how can there be suffering? It takes an I to suffer. And this is why I often do not speak of past much or tell people a story of who I think I am. Because I will get into the habit of creating stories about myself.
Yes. Okay, so for people who is suffering depression, and some people they suffer depression from very young age, it's because those people are here to go into that journey of that suffering, or what exactly is going on in the spiritual realm. What's going on with the people we suffer from depression?
All right. So first of all, it's important to understand what is suffering. Yeah, suffering is self-rejection. Yeah, not of the person, but of who you truly are. Yes. And suffering happens when we reject a challenge. Because this planet here, this experience that you're having, is there to challenge you. And isn't that interesting that everybody
Yes.
wants to go for comfort?
Yes.
Okay, let's be careful. Not everybody. There are a lot of brave beings on this planet who are definitely not going for comfort. But let's say a majority of beings is going for comfort. In order to go for comfort, I have to be in denial of the challenge. But what happens if my divine self, which was actually seeking the challenge and wanted to use the challenge as a catalyst to generate wisdom, and now I'm denying the challenge? Guess what? In that moment when I'm denying the challenge, I am denying the intention of soul, the soul assignment. I'm refusing it. And now the soul, let's say I push it out of the body. I reduce the soul's presence, the soul's energy in the body, because let's say, imagine someone who is married and they have 2 children. Then they go on a trip to India, they go into a temple, and suddenly there's someone walking up to them, let's say a local sage, and a local sage says, well, you're so-and-so. I know who you are. You've been here before. Suddenly that being is having a vision. Oh, in a past life, I used to teach here. How do you go back to your wife and kids? So then the guilt comes. Oh, if I follow the calling, I have to give up my 9 to 5. What am I going to do with my wife and kids? So if then there is a denial of the soul intention to become spiritual, for example, or to be of service, and if we deny that intention in that moment because of some sort of selfish desire, I want to be accepted by my wife. And then the ego says, I don't want to challenge her. No, it's the other way around. It's like not wanting to be challenged.
Right.
So then there is an avoidance of uncomfortable emotions. And that is self-denial. In that moment, the ego says, I don't want to face those challenges. I rather go back to my 9 to 5, and suddenly I'm depressed. Because I've denied my divine self. I've rejected my soul. And now mental illness happens.
Ooh. That was very deep.
Many will not accept that. And there are many who will get offended by that. I recently told a friend who I love very much, I said, traumas are not holy. And if you try to protect traumas, you believe in the unholy. Because in order to be a traumatized being, you need to be limited. So, for example, do you want to go deeper? It's
Yes.
up to you. I'm making you an offer. All right. The way you introduce yourself, we speak about PTSD. We speak about depression. What happens if there's no depression, PTSD left? Does Gloria still exist? What do you do without it? Suddenly it becomes currency. Suddenly it becomes identity. What are you going to do without it? This is exactly what the ego fears. If I'm free of suffering, are people even interested in me? Do I have something to offer?
So what you mean is like I'm casing myself in those 3 subjects instead of be open to something more else, instead of just talking about these 3 subjects, like when I present myself.
Well, obviously you are much deeper than that. And you also know it. Yeah, so I'm only teasing you a little bit because I know you're much deeper than that. It is the way that we communicate for the convenience of using language,
Right.
because certain things are so far beyond language they cannot be communicated in language.
Yeah.
Okay? You know you're much deeper than that. But you need to be very careful that it doesn't become who you think you are. Because what happens if you get an invitation to go deeper? So that identity is temporary. But if you try to make it impermanent, if you try to make that identity immortal, suddenly you have to exist in terror. Don't you see this with all dictators, with all communist leaders or insane kings? They created great statues of themselves, temples, yeah, because they wanted to even make their ego survive death. That level of insanity, that level of terror that they must have existed in. Yeah? To constantly have to defend the illusion of grandeur.
Right.
So only a simple man or a simple woman can get in contact with God. Because if you are too full of yourself, if you have too much story of who you are, if you have a gigantic biography, hey, I have even a biography on my website. But I know that this is how I communicate to people who are very far removed from what I actually do. So they have a basic understanding in ways that it relates to them. But I do not invest in that from my own inner knowing. I know this is an appearance, like a suit is an appearance, or a haircut is an appearance. People speak about race, people speak about gender. Well, guess what? They're not even people on the deepest level of who they are. It's the people illusion, it's the person illusion. And often those who work with trauma, they get caught up in the idea of personhood, that they are people who are having trauma. But if they are people, it means they are bodies, they have a limited psychology, they have a limited existence, and that means they can't overcome everything, but they can. But not as people, as spirit they can. So then, we need to be careful how we introduce ourselves. Because your mind will always look for identity, even if you have spiritual experience. Let's say you sit in meditation, you see one of your past lives as a holographic memory, and you walk through it, and you see everything in great detail. Can you come back after that experience, wake up in the morning, make yourself breakfast, without creating identity from it? Now I'm so and so. Now you have more memory to suffer. Now you have not only present life memory to suffer, or past life memory to suffer. So every time we create identity, we create a limitation. And then we start resisting the divine. Because the limitation is what? Comfort. But you cannot be comfortable and divine at the same time. The divinity has no need for comfort. It's the ego that has need for comfort. It's the person illusion that has need for comfort.
I also notice that since I've been more observer of everything what's going on in my life, I've been having major transformation because it gives you the space, the freedom, like the freedom of not worrying so much. And it took me a long time to realize that it's like it gets to a moment that you're so tired of the suffering, let's call, of the ego holding you down, that you just said, like I said when I was skin up 11 days after, okay, this is my reality, I surrender, I just want to be here, and that's it, done. And that's what happens to me, like, okay, like God or the universe source wants me to walk this way, I'm gonna walk the way he wants. And since I did that, and since I say that, I feel much lighter. And things are coming my way without any resistance. Things are people. I met people that what I never had the intention to meet, and it's like everything is for me. But because I just surrendered to God and surrendered to everything. And I said, whatever comes, and I will respond the way you want me to respond. And I feel more free in myself to do that.
And that means that you made great use of the catalyst that was provided for you, yeah, of the challenge that was provided for you. But at some point, and you will find this out in your own process, oh, now it's time to surrender the story, I'm the one who was kidnapped.
Right.
Because now it has become currency. Now it has become identity. Yeah. So at some point to free yourself even from that. So the great saint from China, Lao Tzu, used to say, work is done, work is forgotten. So when you make use of the catalyst, drop it. Don't create identity, because now you have a new illusion to defend. I'm the one who experienced this. Freedom means identitylessness. So the difficulty here is the discernment, of course, because if we speak about doubtlessness, well, there are fanatics who believe that they're doubtless, you know, religious fanatics, people who overcome by some sort of ego hallucination of what they believe religion is, or what they believe what God is, and then they try to impose that on others.
Yes.
This is not doubtlessness. This is the highest effort in self-denial possible. And this is, in clinical terms, it would be the highest level of a pathological narcissism that is possible. But doubtlessness is something arises from knowing, not from belief. It doesn't require faith. You can have trust in the process, yes, but it doesn't require blind faith, because truth will be self-evident, but we need to let go of our illusion of who we are first in order to get in touch with truth. And then, of course, the difficulty is because of years of programming that we have received in a very sick and controlled society.
Yes.
To get past the programming, to quiet the mind to that level that spirit communication becomes possible. And even when it becomes possible, which everybody can do, by the way, with the proper training, if they want to do it. If they want to do it, you see? So, but even if that spirit communication happens, then even more of discernment needs to develop, because suddenly you get into contact also with the side of spirit that might not be benevolent, that tries to get in there and tries to make you identify with your ego and your desires. So the goal of a soul ultimately on this planet is to reach an energy state where it can escape the gravity of the lower energies.
Yes.
That's what's going on.
Exactly.
So in the yogic perspective, if I would describe that, yeah, most people are aware we have 7 energy centers in the body. Yeah, you see, most people have seen this chart, yeah, with the third eye and the throat chakra and the heart chakra and so on. So the lower energies are all below the solar plexus. Yeah, those are the 3 basic centers where we have like the root chakra where the sexual energy rises, yeah, and we have the pleasure centers that exist in the 2nd chakra under the navel, and we have the solar plexus. So all the energies below is the biological and the animalistic nature.
Right.
And this is where desire happens and fear happens.
Yes.
Now, a yogi at some point through certain practices that I won't give in detail because this is for people who are initiated and can handle it, is to raise the energy from the lower into the higher, to withdraw the energy from the lower frequency band. Think of it like an octave in music. You're leaving that octave in music. Because in the lower frequency band, underneath the solar plexus, this is what connects us to what is the lower astral realm where the dark entities reside. And this is what people would understand as the demonic realm. And from there, our fears and desires arise. So to get past that energy frequency band, so if we want to raise past that, yeah, so we don't overlap with this lower frequency band anymore, we go past it, we need to face our fears. And that's called shadow work. So then we sit in meditation and we face literally our demons.
Yes.
We meet them.
Yes.
And everything we see, we don't react with conflict, with anger, because that will be more fear. Give more fear to more fear, you're creating more fear. What's the point? So
Right.
not to act with lower energy to lower energy, but instead be observant, then have a compassionate understanding of the fear desire complex, release it, increase in energy. And slowly you reach an energy state where the body cannot contain you, where you're not trapped anymore. And that's the mystical practice. But most people don't want that, you see. What most people want is, I want to be around a guru and his energy, and now I feel his peace, and now I can get lazy and comfortable. And once the master leaves the body, everybody runs around like headless chickens. Happened when Yeshua left the body, happened when Gautama left the body. Those who were truly practicing and who were on the yogic path, they weren't scared because they perfectly understood. But the rest was tremendously scared and traumatized. Because instead of establishing their own direct connection to the divine, they just relied on being around the master.
So that's what happened with Moses. When Moses went to when he went to a private moment, like a meditation, to get, the 10 Commandments or that story. When he came back, people were so crazy, and it's because they was not crazy. They was afraid because they thought he left them, so there wasn't fear. So they become like all this they did everything what they said in the Bible, the story in the Bible. And when he came, he was very angry to find all that stuff. But again, it's because they was laying on his, waiting for his energy, waiting for what he's gonna do, waiting for what he was gonna say. So when he left, everybody panicked and started doing all that kind of crazy stuff, that what they said in the story of the Bible.
But the thing is that this is the tendency of immature consciousness, is to delegate sovereignty outside of oneself. This is what you've seen the last 2 years.
Yes.
People believing a highly corrupt elite, and the outcome will be devastating. There will be a tremendous reduction in population very, very soon, because many will die from the vaccines. That's the outcome, because they're delegating responsibility to those who pretend that they're serving them, but they're actually not. They're self-serving. So the need to delegate means we're seeking comfort, and that means we can be misled and manipulated. So those who seek comfort, what is their issue? Why can they be manipulated and misled? And why they expect Moses to save them, why they expect Jesus to save them, why they expect Buddha to save them? Why are they worshipping?
Exactly.
Well, worshipping is self-denial. You worship to create distance. You worship the Christ so you don't become the Christ. Yeah. But there is a reason for this, because they are afraid of their demons. They are afraid when they go into the silence, when they meet God in the silence, in meditation, for example, that then their demons will arise, their shadows will come up, and of course they will. So they do not want to face them. And that's when they delegate. And that is corruption. But when you face your shadows, when you sit with your traumas, and you begin transmuting them through correct spiritual understanding, what happens is that you begin liberating yourself from the limitation. You become Buddha, you become Christ, you become Krishna. But comfort is the opposite of becoming. It's the very denial of becoming. Comfort says, I don't want to move. I want to turn on my TV, get my snacks, and avoid all challenge. In such a state, dependency develops. Dependency is a result of not facing one's own shadows. Because now my shadows make me uncomfortable. They come out as mental illness, as psychosis, as personality disorder, as depression, as desire, as anxiety. Now those shadows make me uncomfortable. Now I need someone to comfort me. Instead of saying, I'm gonna end my illusions.
Exactly. I'm gonna work myself.
Yeah. Speak.
Like you said, like work myself. I'm gonna find out what is all this about me, and not like going into the comfort zone.
Yes. The difficulty, though, for most people is that they struggle with self-love. That's why they're in there in the first
Yes.
place. So when they try to work on each other, they often create more beliefs of being unworthy, of not being valuable, and then they create even more distance to the divine. So, for example, those people who worship Jesus, they don't get it. Become Jesus. But in order to become Jesus, you need to application. Okay, application is very important. But why do we not apply or develop discipline then? Because discipline has to do with value. When we recognize value, discipline naturally comes. There is no such thing as laziness. It doesn't exist. There is simply the inability to recognize value. If I don't believe I'm valuable, I will not face my darkness because I'm not believing I'm worthy of entering the light. And that's the issue. That people don't believe that they're worthy of entering the light, but everybody is, because everybody has the Christ within them. They have just forgotten. And the whole delusion or the illusion that is designed here on this planet is to create the idea that you are sinners, that you are guilty, because it keeps you in a low frequency space where you can be manipulated.
Exactly. There you go.
Sin doesn't exist. It's nonsense.
No.
Guilt is manufactured.
Yes.
But you can't figure this out if you're not willing to face the shadows.
Exactly.
So delegation doesn't work. So in that sense, when you meet an authentic guru, it's going to be the most uncomfortable time of your life, because there will be no niche where your ego can hide. That's a real guru, where you cannot escape the light no matter where you turn. That's a real guru. But someone who makes you comfortable and tolerates your illusions is gonna assist you in suffering more. And why are they doing? What attachment do they have? Financial, sexual, whatever. Yeah. So it's very important to understand that authentic teaching is the most offensive thing on the planet. Because truth will offend all your illusions. You need to be offended. Everybody needs to be tremendously offended to find out they're suffering their own illusion. They're not suffering truth. They're suffering denial of truth. So true teaching is highly offensive. And it needs to be. And now we are trying to remove everything that is offensive from life. Isn't that obvious what's going on here? It's the establishing of the anti-Christ culture. Anti-Christ culture is anti-enlightenment culture. It has nothing to do with the devil. That's just the archetype that people try to use to blame it on something. It's our own consciousness. It's what we choose. We choose to be comfortable. Of course, then the dark entities can come in, take over our governments and everything, because we choose to delegate instead of being sovereign. Instead of saying we the people and actually mean it, not complain about it on the internet, but actually embody it, becoming it.
Wow, we have 1 hour already. Julian, tell everybody what's going on with you and how people can connect with you.
Well, obviously, beautifully, you've already posted my Instagram, but they can just Google my name. I have my own website if they're if they're not scared off right now, and if they seek, for example, online counseling. But very, very soon, I will leave Germany. Yeah, I will go to South America, because we are going to create a spiritual community of sincere practitioners. And there's going to be a devotion to the path of yoga. And many people may believe yoga is stretching and breathing. No, it's much deeper than that. The greatest yoga is invisible. You know, when I realized yogi sits, he doesn't stretch, he doesn't do anything physical, he doesn't do anything that is detectable by the visible eye. The highest yoga is to go past the body, and this is what we will attempt to achieve. Where I know it's very possible. But I'm not concerned about myself in that regard, but there are some who will attempt to achieve it there, and I will assist them as much as I can to achieve it. So this will be a place not of comfort. This will be a place of facing all illusions. So it might not be attractive to the general public, which is very good. At some point, we might open up for public practice, but there will be an internal practice and there will be a public practice.
So you're gonna create two ways, like one for retreats and the other ones who really want to commit in the spiritual path, and to be like serious about the spiritual path.
Those who want to be of service, those who want to become teachers, healers, mediums, yeah, this will be, let's say, the practice for those to facilitate those abilities, yeah, to bring out their divine assignment, so to speak, yeah. And it's for those who want to be of service. There are many people who are not consciously yet at the place where they understand that service is what liberates you. Still something someone else needs to liberate them. So there will be public practice, and the public practice will be less intense, and where it's more to help a wider audience. And then there will be internal practice for those who want to live a spiritual life 24/7, and they will live together. They will develop the abilities. Yes, and it's very important to have both, because the internal practice is the foundation. Yeah, the inner group practice, because a temple is not a building. A temple is energetic integrity. And once integrity is there, you can open it to the public, because it will not be disturbed by the public energies. Yeah. So what I will do, basically, what my assignment is, so to speak, my assignment is to teach the teachers. They can do the public work then in the retreats and so on.
Wow, that is awesome. And when is this gonna be?
Well, exact timeline is hard to say. We're gonna leave for Peru. This is where it's gonna be. We're gonna leave in July. But we still need to build. We need to acquire land and start building, and this might take a few months. So there's and even after we have built, we will retreat into the private workings first to establish that group synergy, that group coherence that we need. And when I feel people are ready, then we will hold retreats, and people can come for several weeks or even months if they want to live with us and to get in touch with higher energies.
Wow, that is awesome. So, and what kind of person or people will contact you? Like, what kind of help do you do for some people that they need help from you? Because I know the sessions with you are not a typical session. Is go more deeper than that. I know you challenge a lot, so a lot of people are very uncomfortable with the challenges. So
yes, well, it depends. There is no such thing as an invalid experience. So what I mean is that we all are evolving where we are right now. So the intensity in which I work, I will say it clearly, I work in an uncompromising way, because we are going all the way. We're not going partial way. Yeah, we're not just another yoga retreat or another plant medicine retreat. We're not providing a simple service for people to, let's say, get this service and then escape it as fast as they can. What we're doing is intense alchemy. So this is not for beginners. This is for advanced practitioners, because beginners will experience it as harsh,
right,
and as not compassionate and as cruel, because they're not at the point where they understand that it's actually merciful to remove all the illusions. But if you still have great addictions and great attachments, you will feel deprived And depriving people is not the appropriate way. The appropriate way is to slowly introduce people to spiritual practice. So through the practice, their attachments and desire drops away piece by piece. Say if they have substance issues, if they have sex addiction issues, gambling issues, whatever they have. But for all of those people, there are plenty of psychotherapists around.
Wow.
But if you want to work towards union with the divine, it's a different practice altogether. So what I'm saying is there is enough service for all of those around who want to have a partial expansion in this life. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can choose to only have a partial expansion in this life. You can choose to, let's say, through counseling, improve communication and marriage. You can choose to understand your childhood traumas, to be a more loving parent. Yeah, you can choose to, for example, live as an artist and release some trauma so you can express your art more beautifully. All of this is wonderful and good. But for those who will be there, the goal is to reach enlightenment and nothing less.
Wow.
There is a point where nothing else does it. There is a point where all desire goes one direction.
Okay, so I want you to, before we go, because we have 1 hour and 11 minutes, before we go, can you give a word or a sentence for the people that are trying to take their life away today?
To take what away today?
Their life. They want to kill themselves. They want to commit suicide. Or they have the intention to commit suicide. What you would say to those people?
What they are trying to do, they're trying to kill the mind. They're trying to kill their ego because they suffer their mind. They suffer the automatic repetition of unloving, mean thoughts. Yeah, they are tortured by mind, and they think they can end mind by shooting it, by hanging themselves. Yes, but it's not going to solve it, because in another lifetime you're going to come back and you're going to attract the same situation. So it's very important to understand that what you are trying to kill cannot be physically killed. It can only be spiritually killed. What they suffer is their illusions, who they believe they are. And they might believe that they're guilty. They might believe that they have failed. They might believe that they're not worthy of love. But all of this is dark energy. That these are the lies. You are all lovable. You are all held by the divine. It is just that you have forgotten, because the illusion seems to be so apparent and so in the face and so confronting. But you can't kill this illusion with violence. You can only kill it through transmutation, through transformation. And wherever you are right now, if a deep yogic practice seems too daunting, some of you might start with psychotherapy. Some of you might have a friendly priest in a local church that you can relate to very well. Go for what serves you in this moment, what brings you closer to who you are. Yes. The very uncompromising path that the yogis go is for those who have already freed themselves from a huge chunk of their illusions. So when they start beginning this practice, they're not too disturbed by it. Yes. But wherever you are right now, you will all have in the present moment a calling to do something. To call your local counselor, to speak to a good friend who has wisdom. You know deep down what to do. But your ego will say, don't go there, don't do it, don't get help, don't get assistance, don't listen to your friend. The dark energy will always try to isolate you in a dark room and attack you. The trick is really to say, okay, I understand I have value. Even I might not believe it yet. You have value. So act as if you have value, even if you don't believe it yet. And someone who is value is, let's say, valuable enough to receive assistance. And that can be a psychotherapist, that can be a spiritual coach, that can be your neighbor who has wisdom for you. Yeah. From value comes the discipline for change, and everybody can.
Right.
Yeah. So it's very important. Certain practices are not for everyone yet. Ultimately, everyone will be free of illusions in the end. But go for the local options that you have right now. Everybody has assistance in their life if they seek it.
Yes.
Understand you're valuable, seek it.
Wow. Thank you so much to be an Unbreakable Life with Glory, the podcast. This is like a what, the number 4 time you are here in this podcast with me?
I have no idea. I think, yeah, maybe third or fourth time. Yeah.
4 time, I think. And every time is like the episodes are longer because the deep conversation keep going, and sometimes you cannot stop that because the message is right there. So thank you so much to be here. Thank you for that message, and to be honest with you, I learned a lot today. Like always, you mesmerize me all the time, and every time I click something, and it's like a puzzle. Like, oh, I need this, I need this, I need to adjust this here and there. So thank you so much to be here today.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be of service to the people, yeah, by allowing me to speak. That's very wonderful.
All right, thank you so much. I will put you in the green room, and I see you soon. Bye bye. Wow. Wow, that was a very deep, 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 deep conversation, and I love those deep conversations. I've been working for many years to be able to talk about this. Chiu say, I love the co-creation. Yes. Thank you so much for everybody who tuned us with us. And remember, we are here. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel because that's the way you can help me to keep going and working in the mission and to save some life or help somebody that really need it for a little word, a little phrase, a little something that probably they're going to wake up them to be a better person the day today or tomorrow or in the future and to feel much better. So thank you so much. This is Gloria Goldberg, the host of this podcast, Unbreakable Life with Glory, the podcast. See you next week at 8 a.m. Eastern Time in Espanol, at 3 p.m. Eastern Time in English. So have a wonderful day and have a wonderful weekend. Take care, and I love you all. Bye-bye. And this is Gloria Goldberg.